In 2012, a primatologist at the University of Portsmouth filmed a chimpanzee named Layla attempting to open a locked box in front of a group of other chimpanzees. She failed repeatedly, and then she did something unexpected. She moved away from the group, sat with her back to them, and refused to make eye contact for several minutes before rejoining. Which raises an obvious question. Was that embarrassment? And if it was, do animals actually feel it, or are we just projecting? Hi, I'm Mara, and this is Microplanet. The honest answer is we don't know for certain, but the question is less simple than it seems, because embarrassment isn't one thing. It's a cluster of related experiences, and some of those experiences are much more likely to exist in non-human animals than others. Embarrassment has two layers, and it helps to separate them. The first layer is what psychologists call the primary self-conscious emotion, a kind of acute social discomfort triggered by the awareness that you've been observed doing something that violates a social norm. This requires something specific, a theory of mind. You have to be aware that other individuals have their own perspectives, that they're watching you, and that what they're seeing might reflect badly on you in their eyes. This is a sophisticated cognitive operation, and for decades, researchers assumed it was uniquely human. That assumption has eroded. There is now strong evidence that chimpanzees, bonobos, elephants, dolphins, and some corvids, ravens and crows, have at least a partial theory of mind. They track what others see and know. Chimpanzees will hide food from dominant individuals who are watching, but not from those who aren't. Ravens will change their behavior based on whether they believe they're being observed. These animals understand, in some functional sense, that other minds are watching and evaluating them. That's the cognitive prerequisite for embarrassment. The second layer is more complicated: social shame, the ongoing negative evaluation of yourself in the eyes of your group, with consequences for your status and relationships. This requires not just awareness that you were observed failing, but an understanding of what that failure means in the social hierarchy, and an ability to model how others will treat you differently going forward. This is a much heavier cognitive lift, and the evidence for it in non-human animals is much thinner. What researchers have documented instead is something that sits between these two layers: embarrassment-adjacent behaviors. Dogs, for example, show a distinctive behavioral profile after doing something their owners respond to negatively: flattened ears, tucked tail, averted gaze, lowered body posture. For years, this was described as guilt, which implied the dog knew in advance that what it did was wrong. Research by Alexandra Horowitz in 2009 showed that's almost certainly incorrect. Dogs display these behaviors in response to their owner's tone and body language, regardless of whether they actually did anything wrong. But that research left open a different question: whether the dog is experiencing something like social embarrassment, an acute awareness that the social interaction is going badly, and an attempt to de-escalate it. The behaviors fit. The internal experience remains unknown. Chimpanzees show something more striking. After losing a fight or failing a task publicly, chimpanzees sometimes engage in what primatologists call face-saving behavior, seeking social reconciliation quickly, grooming a dominant individual, or finding a task they can perform successfully in front of the same audience. This looks less like a mechanical response to social cues and more like an active attempt to manage reputation, which is a step closer to what we mean by embarrassment. The philosophical problem is that embarrassment, at its core, involves a subjective experience of social discomfort, and subjective experience is the hardest thing in science to verify from the outside. We can document behaviors that match embarrassment. We can identify the cognitive prerequisites that make embarrassment possible. We can show that some animals have those prerequisites. But whether any of those animals actually feel something, whether there's a specific inner experience of being humiliated, of wanting the ground to swallow you, remains a question that behavioral science alone can't fully answer. What we can say is that embarrassment is probably not a uniquely human experience. It's almost certainly not absent from every other species either. The most likely picture, based on current evidence, is a gradient. Some version of acute social discomfort exists in social mammals that have a theory of mind, and it becomes richer, more complex, and cognitively layered as brain complexity increases. Whether any of those animals would recognize what they're feeling as embarrassment, whether the word means anything to a chimpanzee sitting with her back to the group after failing to open a box, is a question that might be unanswerable. Which brings us back to Layla. She may not have felt embarrassed the way you would, but she turned her back on the group, and that had to mean something.